Why did David attack the Philistines at Keilah, and what was the result? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Samuel on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Samuel chapter 23, verses 1 to 13, but before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 1 Samuel 23, verse 1, but if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Samuel chapter 23, beginning at verse 1. Then they told David, saying, Look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah, and they are robbing the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go and attack these Philistines? And the Lord said, David, go and attack the Philistines, and save Keilah. But David's men said to him, Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? Then David inquired of the Lord once again. And the Lord answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hand. And David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines, struck them with a mighty blow, and took away their livestock. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. Now it happened, when Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, fled to David at Keilah, that he went down with an ephod in his hand. And Saul was told that David had gone to Keilah. So Saul said, God has delivered him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars. And Saul called all the people together for war, to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. When David knew that Saul plotted evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, Bring the ephod here. Then David said, O Lord God of Israel, your servant has certainly heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down, as your servant has heard? O Lord God of Israel, I pray, tell your servant. And the Lord said, He will come down. Then David said, Will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul? And the Lord said, They will deliver you. So David and his men, about 600, arose and departed from Keilah, and went wherever they could go. Then it was told Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, so he halted the expedition. David has been on the run from Saul. He has come back to Judah from Moab because the Lord told him not to remain in Moab. While all this is going on, word got back to Saul about David's location in Judah, to which he complained that none of his servants provided him with such information, thinking they were in league with David, as he accused Jonathan of being. Doeg told Saul of how Ahimelech the high priest helped David at Nob, which resulted in Ahimelech and all the priests at Nob, save Abiathar, being killed. Coming to chapter 23, we can be tempted again to think that when the Bible presents stories to us, that one story follows another chronologically. And while this story doesn't go before the events of chapter 22, it does run concurrent to them. For Abiathar is going to catch up to David after David saves Keilah. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, though. For verse 1 tells us that David is in Judah, in the vicinity of Keilah, a city about 4.5 kilometers or 3 miles south of Adullam, and 13 kilometers or 8 miles northwest of Hebron. While there, word gets back to David that Keilah is being ransacked by the Philistines, who are stealing from the threshing floors. David and his men, though, are on the run from Saul. Should they help the inhabitants of Keilah and battle with the Philistines? Instead of making the decision himself, David inquires of the Lord. I'd like us to note that this is the first time that we read of David inquiring directly of the Lord while on the run from Saul. Ahimelech said that he inquired of the Lord on David's behalf at Nob, but we don't know what the Lord revealed to him. We do know, though, that David went to Gath and ran into trouble there. He went to Moab looking for safety and found it, but the Lord revealed to David that he was not to remain in Moab. In all of these actions, seemingly David didn't inquire of the Lord. He did hear, though, and the Lord responded that David should intervene and help the people of Keilah. When David told his men this, they responded that we're afraid here in Judah, afraid from Saul, that is, and now you would have us go and attack the Philistines in Keilah? Their reaction is reasonable. for it was true that they had been hiding from King Saul, who would have a vast army at his disposal. Why then would they not only want to give up their position to Saul, but actually engage with a foreign army where many, if not all of them, might be killed? David again inquired of the Lord, and the Lord confirmed he would deliver the Philistines into David's hand. And David's faith in God was such that he convinced his men to fight, and David did save Keilah and defeat the Philistines. It is at this time that Abiathar reaches David at Keilah and is able to tell David not only what happened to the priests, but to warn David that Saul is coming. For Saul thought that the Lord had trapped David in Keilah, a city with gates and bars, so that Saul could catch him. I don't know why Saul would have thought this, for the Lord was with David and not him. But explaining the mind of a delusional man is simply an impossible task. With Saul's armies coming, David inquired of the Lord again, this time through Abiathar the priest, as to whether Saul's army was coming to besiege Keilah. The Lord responded that they were. David inquired if the people of Keilah would deliver David into Saul's hands, and the Lord responded that they would. Now, why would Keilah deliver David into Saul's hands, seeing as how David had just saved them from the Philistines? Because Saul would come with a large army, and an accusation of treason against David. And just as Judah delivered Samson to the Philistines at their charge, if David remained, the men of Keilah would do the same. By giving David a response, God wasn't telling David to stay and get captured. Rather, he was telling David to flee, otherwise he would be captured. This is another type of passage that shows us that the future isn't written, but our choices will affect it. God knew the hearts of the men of Keilah, and so knew that if David stayed, he would be captured. However, David didn't have to stay. He could go, and thus avoid capture. And that's what David and his now 600 men did. And so, when it was told to Saul that David had escaped Keilah, Saul halted the expedition. But that didn't mean that Saul would stop his hunt for David. No, it will continue, as we'll see, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Samuel chapter 23, verses 14 to 29, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.